Hey everybody, welcome into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center here on Ohio State's campus. This is Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. I am Austin Ward, joined as always by my new and improved cohort, Tim May. And
Cohort's my word.
And my old...
Who's he improved over, himself or me?
I'm improved over air.
Me, everyone.
Fair enough.
And my old and familiar cohort,
I'm so
Jeremy
old.
Birmingham.
I'm so old.
Yeah, well, we're all getting up there.
Terminology.
Training camp is new, though, guys. How about that segue? 4 practices in here. Ohio State was out here. We watched this morning. I know that I'm not even going to have to ask the question. I know what Tim was most excited to hear about. He's been talking about Josh Proctor since spring, and 2 interceptions this morning. So go ahead, Tim. Take it away. You're right.
Well, as former Iowa coach Hayden Fry once said, what a surprise that Josh Proctor flashed in the, as far as, well, you know, when I asked Ryan Day who flashed, he wouldn't name anybody, but he'd already said Josh Proctor had 2 interceptions out of the 4 that were picked today, and which tells me 2 things. Number 1, they must be going over the middle a little bit more with the pass game, and number 2, Josh Proctor is reacting to the ball, et cetera, and making plays just like we saw in the spring. I stand by my illusion back then that he will be one of the breakout players in 2019 for the Buckeyes.
I think it's also, Tim, a benefit that if you have Brendan White at this bullet and it seems like it's more of a linebacker situation for him, well, then somebody else has to be that second safety. Right. And we've kicked around the other names. Isaiah Pryor, and Jordan Fuller continues to talk about him as being a good player. Jocelyn Went, wherever he fits in.
Right.
But the guy who's most in line for a benefit there is Proctor.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you can get on Twitter. I mean, off YouTube, I put a little video up of Jeff Hafley, showing him how to break on a would-be ball carrier, and it's pretty funny, but it's like those are the things that are coming along. And the other thing you're seeing, and we've talked about this, is these defensive backs, when we get a chance to talk to them, they're talking about Jeff Hafley and the difference he's making just in their awareness of things going on in front of them and being on the same page, et cetera. And, you know, 4 practices in, it looks like it's paying off.
Birm, what'd you see there?
Well, to put a bow on Josh Proctor, I talked to somebody at a recruiting camp in June close to the Buckeye program and asked them about their defense and what they thought was going to be better. And they said that there were 3 guys on that defense they think are surefire first-round picks in the NFL draft. One of them is Chase Young, obviously. Jeffrey Okudah is the other. And the third guy was Josh Proctor that was mentioned. So they obviously have high expectations for him. For him, it's always been about putting the practice together with the talent. So, I mean, what you look at on the defense, to me, again, I'm looking at the guys, and they just look bigger. They look focused. They look like last year it didn't seem like they had direction, and they were kind of just floating. And I think even in drills today that we see, you just see a group that is really narrow focused and really moving quickly, moving decisively. And to me, that's what defense is supposed to be about. If you're out there, and Ryan Day has said it over and over this spring, if you think, you're probably messing up. And they look like a group that is much more relaxed.
Yeah, it just plays off, you know, what Greg Madison and Jeff Hafley were talking about in the spring. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but don't let the scheme get in the way.
Yeah.
And guys are reacting to the ball, playing hard. I mean, the defensive line, you know, we talk about it. I mean, I'm not gushing here. This is a talented group of football players we're watching practice for what we got 5 periods, 6 periods today. And every day you're going to see something a little bit new that catches your eye.
That idea that, you know, it's the scheme and maybe lacking coaching last year with Greg Schiano and Billy Davis is interesting to me, because we've now seen this a couple times where Ohio State goes out in that base personnel and the 3 linebackers are the same. And I've heard, you know, some people can't believe that. Taraji Mitchell needs to be out there, and maybe he will be at some point. Baron Browning has to be out there. Maybe he will be at some point. But this is a second group of coaches that still looks at Tuff Borland, looks at Pete Warner, and looks at Malik Harrison and sees guys with potential. I think for all the problems that Schiano and Davis may have had, which are justifiable, they've been coaching for a very long time, and they know talent. And this is another group that's seeing that and says, those guys need to be on the field.
Well, the thing you're looking for is, bottom line is, initially, do guys line up right? And do they do they take care of their gap responsibility from play to play? Yeah. And the veteran guys, you would think, were always going to have an edge there. But then there comes those moments when you got to make plays. What separates finally on this level, and especially what gets you to the promised land, which is the college football playoffs and beyond, is guys, individuals making those big-time plays when it's their time to make them. Yeah. And that's why I think you're going to see an evolution as this season goes on who is and who isn't playing. But, you know, we'll see.
I think back to 2017, and I remember Chris Worley was in the middle, and the defense was struggling in a major way. Tough Borland got put into the middle, and all of a sudden things stabilized on defense. And
because
it wasn't
Worley went to the outside.
It wasn't because Tough Borland wasn't a good football player then and became a worse football player in 2018. Like something.
He was a less healthy football player.
That's also people have to take that into consideration. The guy was playing on a surgically repaired Achilles tendon that was only 6 months after surgery. So I think that all of the negatives that you can point to last year, I think some of it you just have to realize that these are good football players. They're not playing at Ohio State if they're not. And maybe there's a better potential, maybe there's more athletic guys behind them, but you have to make plays, you have to be consistent, you have to know your reads, you have to do everything before you can play here at Ohio State. It's not just about who looks the best in pads or who runs the fastest.
Yeah. Lettermen Live brought to you by Byers Auto with Tim and Birm. Let's switch to the offensive side, guys. Wherever you want to. We don't have to change our own personnel.
We don't have to flip-flop.
But I don't know what caught your eye, Tim. I think, for me, if I was starting with something, it would be the offensive line trying to come together. We talked about that on the Tim May podcast this week, so check that out if you haven't already on lettermenrow.com and YouTube. But quarterbacks, running backs, what got your attention?
Dude, Harry Miller. I mean, I remember when Orlando Pace showed up here. I was at that first – we got to watch all of practice back then. And Orlando Pace walked in for the first time onto the practice field, and you go, ready for prime time, going to start from the start, and he did. Some guys just looked the part. Harry Miller. Now, Josh Myers, I think, has the center job right now, the starting center job. But they got to figure something out because Harry Miller, he's a 5-star. Although I know that doesn't matter if they get here. Of course, you don't see them recruiting 2 stars, right?
Yeah, maybe they don't
matter in the recruiting process. Which is
double talk from Ryan Day today.
I think that's the players are saying.
It matters.
Shut up about your rank.
Exactly. But be quiet. The thing is, but the bottom line is Harry Miller looks the part, and very impressed by him. And Enoch Vimahi, the kid from Hawaii, who showed up at 255 pounds and now weighs 297. I guess mainland food is the difference. Yeah. That's what I was going to ask Ryan Day that, but I thought that might be a little too flip. Some people kind of judge you on your questions, but the bottom line is there's a guy, and then we've talked about DeJuan Jones for a while now. I mean, he's 380. They want him to lose weight, but these are the 3 freshmen. Yeah. It's crazy. Like Ryan Day talked about, the other thing that stands out real quickly about that group too, I mean, I've noticed this for several years now. It seems like just the class of person that they're recruiting now. That's not knocking anybody else, but it just seems to be different. It seems to be, for one of another term, a little more elite, across the board. And those are 3 guys just from an athletic standpoint and a size standpoint. You go, these guys are ready to play. Now, they're not all 3 going to play. Maybe none of them will. But on an offensive line group that's maybe the deepest it's been in 10 years here, they definitely fit in the room.
It's critical for Vimahi to do that too, for him to put on those 25 pounds in 2 months. This is a kid who likely is going to be taking 2 years off and heading to a religious mission after his freshman year. So if he wants to really make a mark on the program, he has to do that now. So it's really encouraging, I think, to see that. Now, other than that, for me, what stood out today was what Ryan Day said about the running backs, that they don't have a true backup running back right now. And to sort of validate that, I was watching the tailbacks, and they're going through the drills, and the second guy through after J.K. Dobbins was Amari McMahon, the walk-on number 28, who is ahead of Steele Chambers, ahead of Marcus Crowley. So I think that
Demario McCall.
Ahead of Demario McCall. So, I mean, I think that they're desperately searching for someone to be able to step up and take some of that pressure off of J.K. Dobbins this year. And during Ryan Day's press conference today, he was asked about Demario McCall, and he seemed like he sort of uncharacteristically danced around a question, because I don't know that he knows exactly what they have in him, or if he's someone that they think can really contribute to this offense.
It's funny because J.K., we were talking the other day, seems like he wants about 30 carries a game, so that maybe they don't need that guy.
He doesn't want to back up. They're gonna have to have one as many snaps per game as Ohio State plays. I think maybe Master Teague was a little bit dinged up here early in camp. Saw him at least on the side for a little bit when we were here, so maybe that pecking order would have changed. It probably would have for those drills. But I don't know if I'm in the minority or if this Ryan Day's sense of it is more indicative that people are coming around to what I've said. I don't think that Demario McCall is going to be a key part of this Ohio State offense. Injuries have robbed him of some of that, and he didn't play in the spring. When he's been on the field, He's had issues with ball security. I don't think that the coaching staff has full faith. Maybe this is challenging him, and I'm wrong on that about that. But
sometimes those guys see the light, and it happens. I mean, it clicks on for them. I mean, sometimes when you're not getting to play and you know there are people in front of you, it's hard to have that, what you want to call concentration. I mean, that ready to go pilot mentality on an aircraft carrier, because everybody doesn't get to fly the plane. And but this is a critical moment in Demario McCall's football career, in my opinion, just like you're talking about.
I mean, people see it, and they see the play against Michigan last year to set up the score at the end of the first half, but then they see the fumble on the kickoff, and it's just that inconsistency. In a program like this, you have to be on or you are off. I mean, there's no it's okay to be mediocre.
When you're trying to make your mark, sometimes that one play sets you apart. Like we're talking about the fumble on the kickoff. When in fact, a lot of the guys who are regulars may make mistakes all the time, but it doesn't stand out, And
I think it's just indicative of him because the sample size is relatively small because of the injuries, and then because they tried to find this role for him on special teams, and it didn't work. They've tried to find a way for him to help at wide receiver, and it didn't work. H-back, the same thing. And if you start looking at all the position and all the talent Ohio State has accrued there, I mean, what are you going to do? You're not going to just side with Demario McCall because he's older than Jalen Gill.
Right.
So that's a tough situation. And now in this running back spot, if he can't make the most of it, if Master Teague misses a day or two and he comes back and takes those carries, I just don't see a role. That's maybe I'm way off base.
We'll see if you get in there and you make something happen, man. That changes everybody's lives.
Yeah, that helps. All right, Birm, you wrote today about the running back. Speaking of running backs, I guess this has been the hot topic for a week or so. Ohio State's resetting the board. What can they do right now? What will they do? Who are some options? What are you seeing there?
Well, it's probably going to be the hot topic until December, if we're being honest, because they need to sign 2 running backs in this class of 2020. They thought they had to. They no longer do. And at that, they're starting over. This is about getting guys back on campus, guys like Mike Drennan from Dublin Kaufman, who they need to figure out if he's going to fit into this offense, whether it's E.J. Smith, Emmitt Smith's son, getting him back on campus for a third time. These are a lot of young players that were told over the course of the month of July, sorry, we're full, move on. Mm-hmm. So now you're saying, wait, don't move on, actually. Can you come back? And that is a difficult thing for kids and their families and their coaches to swallow. So I think that we're going to see some, I don't want to say damage control being done here in the next month or two, but it's about rebuilding relationships. And so I know we're going to keep talking about it and everyone's going to keep asking about it, but this is not going to be an overnight fix. We're looking at a November, December to get these 2 running backs in the class type of situation as opposed to being it done in a matter of weeks.
And maybe they work on recruiting J.K. Dobbins to come back for a senior year. You know what I mean? That's just like recruiting.
He's just sitting right there.
That's a huge piece of the puzzle. If they get a sense that J.K. may decide to return, which I think over the last year the thought has been he's gone after this year no matter what. If that changes, all of a sudden you only need 1 for next year, and you can start to be a little bit more creative with where you go.
Until December.
Yeah, as much as he's talked, and he was out on Friday, the first practice. I mean, this guy has been up front since the moment the Rose Bowl ended that he wanted to win a national championship and be the best running back in the country.
Exactly.
Maybe if he's not that this year, you have that situation. But then, I mean, you're going to have one disappointed J.K. Dobbins anyway. So I don't know if you win in that situation. We
all know, watching him as a freshman, that first game, I even wrote about that on our Lettermen Row, that first game with that jump cut and, 170, 180 yards. It was crazy. He goes on to a freshman rushing record for Ohio State. But that jump cut was there all year pretty much.
Right.
He got banged up. I mean, a freshman playing full-time, got banged up some. But it clearly wasn't there last year, that what you want to call freshness, for want of another term, that just, it was almost like he said, he was trying to hit home runs all year, and he kept some foul outs, some singles and stuff. But
maybe the chance to play with Justin Fields another year and the offense. I mean, not to get ahead.
Well, we are really jumping out there.
You're exactly right. I was going to get to that.
We're obviously still weeks away from 2019 taking off, but that 2020 offense should be, with the emergence of guys like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jalen Gill and all these young receivers that are coming in. Yeah. If you put those guys all out there with Justin Fields having 2 years in the program and J.K. Dobbins returning, a line that is going to have a lot of really talented young players like Harry Miller and like Enoch Vamahi potentially, all of a sudden there's a lot more reason to come back.
That's the point. And the other thing, we're talking about the running game this year, 2019. Number 1, That's, by the way, Justin Fields on offense. Jeffrey Okuda on defense, right?
Very effective work there.
But number one, Justin Fields just adds a dimension they didn't have a year ago, and that was as prolific an offense as Ohio State's ever had from a total yardage standpoint. Yet this guy can take it to the house. You give him a crease, he can take it to the house. Didn't have that at quarterback last year, so now you have, with him and J.K. Dobbins in the backfield just by themselves, you got two legit big-time guys who can take.
We watched it for the last 8 years at Ohio State. The threat of a running quarterback changes a lot of things.
Everything. I mean, I've got a little video on Twitter of him going to the edge and making a pitch today in practice, and you can see it on YouTube. But it's, that quickness is obvious.
Yeah. All right, as we wrap up here on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto, we've got a couple more days. We're going to do some interviews on Thursday, another viewing period on Saturday. What will you be watching, Tim? Do you have a question that's still lingering in the back of your mind that you haven't really got a good feel for yet after just a couple days of camp?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen them play football yet. I mean, as we get to watch. I mean, and we probably, who knows if we'll get how much we're going to see.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Exactly. Well, we're getting interviews on Tuesday now, so that's a one plus in the Ryan Day era. There's a new day has dawned, and definitely that's a big change. I'm talking about during the season. But the bottom line is I am very curious of how that linebacker group is going to filter out, what's going to happen there. And because like I kept telling everybody was sleeping on Pete Werner. I mean, they got started all year last year until finally, probably things started swimming in their head. I mean, it was some changes had to be made. They made them, et cetera. But as y'all pointed out, he and Tough Borland are holding their own, at least initially. Sometimes you go with the older guys. That was the 3 starters last year. You kind of go with that until you don't, and make the other guys prove their way. I'm very curious to watch the linebacker situation.
Gotcha. Birm?
I know that the Buckeyes returned KJ Hill at wide receiver, but for me, that's the position group that changes what happens with this offense this year, because you have guys like Austin Mack, who's been sort of unable to stay healthy. You have Benjamin Victor, who's been wildly inconsistent. Somebody has to step up and fill that talent and leadership void left by Johnny Dixon and Paris Campbell and Terry McLaurin. And when you're talking about a brand new quarterback room, not just one new quarterback, 4 new full-time starters on the offensive line, nobody backing up J.K. Dobbins, somebody in that wide receiver room has to be the guy. Yeah. So to me, Brian Hartline's earned a lot of praise in the last year plus. Yeah. Now is when I think you're going to see if he's what we think he is.
Now, it's almost like you've put an all-star team together. You know what I mean? You know how all-star teams play sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes it's pretty good, sometimes it's not. But I wanted, before you wrapped up, I wanted to say Chris Olave, because every time I have talked about receivers, I always forget to name him. And he was as outstanding a guy at points last year at the end of the year as they had. And so I want to say Chris Olave one more time.
Does a guy like Olave become that full-time entrenched guy, and then you see Benjamin Victor and Austin Mack working around and rotating in? Because I think we always assumed that the veterans are going to get the snaps, but nobody was more consistent last year of that group than Chris Olave.
Yeah, nobody made a bigger play for this team than Benjamin Victor did last year at the wide receiver spots. When you consider what that meant, that catch and go, catch and running, whatever you call that after he caught the ball. But
that's
this
yak.
Exactly, yak. Big time yak. You don't see yaks like that unless you go to Peru. But I digress. The bottom line is he going to be consistent, or he knows this is his year and to make it or break it? So there are a lot of guys, man. The future's in front of them; they can see it.
Don't forget about C.J. Saunders. I'm going to keep beating that drum.
Exactly. C.J. Saunders.
He may not play all that much, but I mean that guy is somebody that he would play for a lot of other Big Ten teams, I can promise you.
Well, you don't offer a walk-on scholarship and then encourage him to return for a 5th year if you don't think he can be a difference maker.
Right.
Hey, and Birm, isn't it amazing how Stan Drayton, talking about the running back room, Stan Drayton made an impact. And, be careful who leaves because they may haunt you later.
Sure did.
I'm talking about running back recruiting, ladies and gentlemen.
It never ends, the recruiting game and all the intrigue. Guess what? Ohio State coverage, it never stops at Lettermen Row either. So a couple practices are in the bank. This Lettermen Live is now done, brought to you by Byers Auto. It's great talking with Jeremy Birmingham and Tim May. As always, I'm Austin Ward. We're going to see you right here later this week.